Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel where we do painting tutorials. Today we'll be doing a snowy mountain scenery using watercolor pencils and a wet on wet technique. Now I know what you think, when wet isn't that just for watercolor paints? As you can tell here, I have on the right side a scrap piece of watercolor paper that is not the best quality, and I've laid out some helio blue reddish on the top, phthalo blue beneath it, cadmium orange, dark chrome yellow, and a bit of black. I've started by lightly misting my good sheet that I'll be using. That way I cover the entire area with water very quickly, very easily. Alternatively, feel free to use a big fluffy brush. And I've added a couple of droplets onto these patches of color I have on my scrap piece of watercolor paper. And with a smaller brush, this is a number 6 synthetic by davinci, I'm mixing the colors as if I'm using normal watercolor paints to achieve the exact tone and shade I need. So here I'm mixing some of the cadmium orange with the phthalo blue, and I like to gently swatch them, like just tap onto a clean piece of the scrap paper to see the exact shade I have mixed. This is very useful because if you were to, let's say, do a base coat of orange directly onto your good sheet of paper and then layer some blue over it and activate it, it's hit or miss. You're never 100% sure of the exact tone you'll get until you've already activated it. And if it's not the tone you want, well, it's too late. It's very, very difficult to fix. In doing it this way with what I call a palette technique, you can just tap onto a clean surface of the scrap piece of paper or onto a napkin and see the exact color you have mixed. And you can also control it. You can make a more orangey mix or a more bluish mix, and you can darken it up, and it makes life so much easier. So I've done a more orangey mix as an undertone, then I add a bit more blue to it, and I use that on the top side of my painting and where I want the shadows of the mountains to be. I do have a pencil under sketch with normal graphite pencil that will be available as a download over at my Patreon page, Sunshine Arts, where I also do full-time painting videos and digital prints of my artwork. So if you're interested in any of that and you'd like to first support me and the channel, links are going to be down in the description and also at the end of this video. And if you can't figure out where you want your shadows to be in your mountains, just cover most of the area of the mountains with a slightly darker bluish mix than what you used for the sky. Now once everything has pretty much air dried, and yes, the air dryer, I do believe in air drying, is much better than using a blow dryer. Change my mind. I mix part of my darker blue, the helio blue I have on the top left of my scrap piece of paper, with a bit of the orange and a smidge of black. And I'm going to use this to paint just the shadows of my mountain. Now we do have that under layer I just finished and left to air dry. That is perfect. But now I'm only going to paint the shadows. I'm going to leave bigger triangular like chunks on the mountain edge blank for now, and those are going to be the highlights. Those are going to be some snowy areas we'll deal with in a bit, but right now I'm just focusing on placing darker bits of color, and then I'm going to dilute them downwards with just a wet brush. I do not clean my brush from the excess color. I just tap it into the water jar and then blend downwards whatever color I have left over on the paper. I do a larger mountain on the right side. I leave some pretty much random blank spaces for piled up snow and snowy slopes and whatever. And I place more color under those empty areas to act as a shadow. Because if you can see the snow, it means it's higher than the rest of the mountain. So yeah, it sort of tends to pop, and if it's higher and it pops up, then it's going to have a shadow beneath it. I hope that made sense, as it did in my brain, but that's not usually the scenario, so I'm just going to show you what I mean instead. I do one more mountain. On the left side beneath the previous two, I do leave a gap between the top two mountains I started with and this one, and that gap is going to act as the snowy edge, so everything beneath that gap is going to be quite dark. Then with a wet brush, sort of clean wet brush, I go over the highlights, those snowy pieces that are popping out, because I want them to be slightly darker than the sky. I do not want them to be the same exact color of the sky, because then you cannot see where the sky ends and the mountain starts. And when I add a smidge of water, parts of the dark color I place as a shadow are going to gently bleed onto the snowy part, bring just a smidge of color onto it without too much effort, to help differentiate our subject from the background. AKA, just go over the highlights with a wet brush. Now I want to add an extra highlight, and if you do want to add extra highlights to your painting and you're not 100% happy with it, just use the lifting off technique, meaning go with a clean, wet brush over the area you want your highlight to be. Gently rub it in. You need good quality paper for this, otherwise it's going to peel. And then tap with a napkin and voila, you're going to have a highlight. Now for my final mountain, I mixed the dark blue with orange and a good amount of black, and I used the tip of my brush to just tap to create a rough edge, because I want to have like a forest on that mountain. Since it is the one closest to us, you'll be able to see the most details. So just with the edge, I sort of tried to ferret out the paint to create some tops for a forest, some tree tops. They're very faintly visible. And then cover everything within the mountain with this very dark mix that we just created with the blue, the orange, and the black. I'm going to use this mixture to add some finishing touches, to add some stronger shadows where the snow tops end and the darker area starts. So I basically very gently go underneath all of the places that I initially left blank. And I'm going to gently diffuse those with a clean brush, just so it's not too harsh. You still have the darkness of this mixture, but gently feathers out to create a smoother watercolor finish. I do add some dots and some lines to larger surfaces of the mountain, just to create some texture, to create some depth, some more interesting details, to make it look a bit more realistic. That is completely optional, but if you choose to do so, it does help to add those lines wherever the edge is a bit crooked, wherever there is a bit of a zigzag. I'd like to give a very special thank you to my Patreon supporters for the month of January. If you found any value in this video, please let me know down in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see each other in the next one. Bye bye.